Hello, everyone, and welcome to the premiere episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'm your host, Ann Papayoti. Thank you for joining me. And I have to admit that I'm a bit nervous today with the first show because I listen to podcasts. I've been a guest on several, but to host one, that's like a whole new ocean full of really scary things. So I have to remember my why. And if I do that, maybe I'll jump back in every week, at least for a while. I'm not going to promise, how long that will be. I kind of feel like it might be something like Forrest Gump, where I may go for a while and then just when I'm done, I'm done. When I run out of something to say. Now, my husband, if he's listening, may already be laughing because I'm sure he thinks I'll never run out of anything to say. But my why is because there's an entire audience out there that struggles with the same issues that my clients do. And I often hear in private sessions, in courses, in support groups, things like, I wish my friend could hear this, or my sister, my brother, my mom, my dad, my son, my daughter. So here is the opportunity for other people to get guidance and to hear tips for healing for some of those issues. So today marks the beginning of a powerful ongoing conversation, a conversation with one another and with ourselves. And I greatly do appreciate your being a part of it. When you stop to think about it, life begins with an inhale and ends with an exhale. It's what happens in between that leaves us holding our breath. So each week we'll explore topics that take our breath away and stop our hearts from beating. And we'll navigate the pathways to healing that are available when we dare to speak our truth out loud. Now, like many of you, I have a long laundry list of soul-crushing experiences, including betrayal by someone I thought of as a best friend, an abusive and adulterous first marriage, a difficult divorce from a narcissist, a post-divorce custody battle, the death of my infant son, another child's health and learning challenges, my own health crisis, the suicide of a close family member, a foster daughter's mental health challenges, and transitioning careers at midlife with multiple relocations starting over and over and over again, to name a few. And people ask me how I've survived. What keeps me from sinking, how I can be happy, how my light keeps shining. And my answer consistently is I stop, I float, I rest, listen, reflect, feel, cry, and honestly sometimes scream, but from the surface because I refuse to hold my breath and be pulled into the heart-stopping emotional quicksand of life. I face the truth, trust myself, find and own my voice, and let go of what and whom I must to navigate each experience by following my own North Star. And it's only when I've not done these things that I have sunk, become lost, and gotten stuck in the murky darkness at the proverbial bottom. Now, interestingly enough, research repeatedly finds that experiencing even one emotionally traumatic event without building a healing resilience can have a devastating long-term impact on overall well-being and life satisfaction. And so I started this show, Soul CPR Healing Out Loud, and view it as more than a podcast. I see it as a safe space for unraveling, exploring, and embracing the beautiful and the messy journeys you and I have experienced. I expect it to become a community of support where special guests and I will share our profound shifts, realizations, and everything that we've learned on our journeys to help you keep your light shining too. So I invite you to share in the comments and to call into the show because whether it's overcoming a fear, navigating a difficult relationship, finding resilience in the face of adversity, or coping with a death, a diagnosis, divorce, or breakup, Your stories will inspire and resonate with others who may be going through similar experiences. Vulnerability is the power tool for connection. Before we get started on today's topic, I want to take some time in this first segment to be vulnerable myself and give you the opportunity to become acquainted with me and my work. But first of all, throughout this series, you will likely meet my dog, Odie. He likes to hang out with me here in my home office, and he is passionate about the doorbell. So if you hear a brutal bark, know it is coming from one of the most affectionate, too big for my lap dogs ever. He's a rescue pit bull mix. He just heard me talking about him. He's asleep right over here. And if he could talk, I'm sure he would have some amazing overcoming and second chance stories to share from his life. And you may also see or hear from my cat, Rocky. He's a Garfield type orange tabby who, like Garfield, is always hungry and would certainly eat lasagna if I would serve it to him. And I will not. And he likes to surprise me on occasion by jumping on the desk and walking right in front of the camera, or by stepping on the keyboard and changing, well, pretty much everything. We'd like to say he was also rescued, but from a pet store. You may even meet my husband or one of my young adult sons who never seem to remember when I cannot be disturbed. Can you relate? I'm sure many of you can. All right. I've shared the most likely interruptions, though with live shows and technology, you never know what else might happen. And I happen to be here in Dallas, Texas, in that area, with a fabulous crew behind the scenes in the Long Island, New York area managing the show. So a big thank you to Dan, who is here with me today in the engineering room. I wouldn't make it without him. And I've also already shared my main laundry list of heartbreak and why I started this podcast to help others. And now I'll tell you why I named it Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. Because you see, unlike some of you, I had a happy childhood. But when that first big emotional trauma happened to me at the age of 20, I lost who I was in my pain, and I was silent about it. And while I was lost, my decisions, my choices, my behaviors were unhealthy and toxic and self-sabotaging. I was in an ongoing downward internal spiral, although I was seemingly forging forward all the time. I was a master at masking my pain, and that, my friends, is avoidance. And avoidance delays healing. It prolongs pain, and in fact, it creates suffering. Once I chose healing and truly reconnected to myself, I recognized there was a process that I went through that I could articulate to others by summarizing it into an acronym of CPR. So more on that later. But for now, here's a short childhood story, just to segue into what I do today. My father taught me to swim at Cosby Lake, located in Clay, Alabama. I wonder if I got anybody back home in Sweet Home, Alabama listening. Shout out to you if so. But anyway, I recall the water being kind of dark, and I would describe it as greenish brown, kind of like the color of tea. And I remember holding my dad's hand and being hesitant to walk into the water because my toes were like squishing into that slimy, mushy sediment of a lake bottom, you know what I mean? And I could feel myself sinking. And then just in time, it's like my daddy gently tugged, unsticking my feet that seemed held fast by the, I don't know, the blob monster that I imagined in my mind. And let me tell you, I truly feared the bottom of the lake. I thought it would swallow me up. And the water appeared darker and murkier the further we went out. So I clung to my dad. I literally wrapped myself around his arm and climbed as high as I could until I was securely fastened around his back. And then he swam us out away from the shore. But when he stopped, to my surprise, he insisted I learn to float before I learned to swim. despite my protest, as I was eager to keep up with the older kids and my big brother. But when I asked him why, he said it was because it could save my life one day. If ever I found myself in water too deep, over my head, exhausted from swimming, I could always stop and rest, breathe, and float. And so he carefully placed me on my back, and I remember being startled at first when he removed his hands, scared that I would sink. However, I remained buoyant, or something that resembled it, because I did not want to touch the bottom of the lake again. And I can tell you, I had no idea how important this lesson would become to my life and those I work with now. My dad did also begin teaching me how to swim that day, and eventually I became a competitive swimmer. And after that, I couldn't wait until I was old enough to become a lifeguard and spend my summers working at the community pool. I mean, that was my dream job. Sit on the guard stand and twirl the whistles lanyard around my hand and watch swimmers from behind my sunglasses, literally like poised to jump in at a moment's notice and assist someone who may struggle in the water. And in 7 summers of lifeguarding, I did assist a few, but the training to prepare for those few times was intense. And it was about survival, but first and foremost, my own. Because anytime you're in the water, there is a risk. And as I became a young adult, I recognized that life has a way of pulling us under, sinking us, and drowning us in pain and challenges. And that it can be easy to get our feet stuck in that mucky bottom of the cloudy, murky waters and not see a way out. Now, like many of you who may be listening, I once was stuck in a pattern of unhealthy, toxic, abusive relationships. I used to feel that tolerating and staying was being nice. And by being nice, that was the only way to ensure that they would like me and not reject or abandon me. I remember going to church and trying therapy and buying a ton of books, and I read them all, highlighters in hand, and I tried to set boundaries, but nothing really changed for me, and I began feeling defeated. I told myself this was probably just my life, and I must deserve what I was getting. I thought it was my duty and my responsibility to try to make other people happy at the expense of my own peace and happiness. I truly think that I was convinced at that time that I had no options. And I do remember the very first time that I truly felt not good enough. Do you remember for yourself? I mean, I had not made the team before and things like that, but that type of loss just pushed me to work harder and to always just, try out again. But the first time I truly felt that I must be unworthy or unlovable, shall we say, was when the someone whom I thought of as my best friend betrayed me with the man I loved and thought I would marry one day. The someone whom I loved like a sister, whom I had championed in her time of success and had comforted in her time of need. So ultimately, I lost the 2 people closest to me, and I lost them to one another. And that's when I began betraying myself. I questioned what was wrong with me and why wasn't I good enough for either of them? Was I not kind enough, generous enough, supportive enough, pretty enough, thin enough, smart enough, funny enough? I felt like a failure. Like I failed. There was nothing I could do. There was no second tryout. I couldn't fix the relationships. I began self-sabotaging by overeating, overdrinking, underperforming, underachieving. In my mind, I proved to myself and everyone I was a failure, and I began isolating myself. I felt broken, ashamed, and embarrassed. Do you see or hear your story in mine? We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about how we can be victimized by life. So, don't go far. We'll be back in a heartbeat with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'm Ann Papayoti. And before the break, I was sharing some of my backstory to help you understand why I do the work that I do. We were talking about traumas, emotional traumas in life. And what happened after my first big emotional trauma is that I started a pattern of being victimized by life, a pattern of controlling and manipulative and abusive people kept showing up to kind of keep me in my place, if you will, from roommates to colleagues to my first husband. You see, I'd not stopped and floated, as my dad had taught me when I was in too deep a water over my head, feeling like I was drowning. I had not healed from the betrayals of my friends, and I was exhausted from swimming away from my pain. And I ended up crawling right into what looked like the first rescue boat. So even though I managed to file for divorce after 8 long years, it took even longer for me to realize that the fear that kept me in the marriage and all the previous unhealthy relationships was still within me. I was out of my marriage, like I jumped overboard, if you will, but I felt like I was treading water, fully clothed and kind of juggling at the same time, if you can picture that. My ex wasn't accepting my choice to leave, and I was now solely financially responsible for my home and working full-time as a single parent with a toddler. I was questioning everything I ever thought I knew about life, love, marriage, and even God. I knew something had to change. And there's so much more to share here about betrayal, grief, abuse, difficult pregnancies, losing a child, finding courage to leave a marriage, narcissistic abuse syndrome, the power of belief systems, all topics for future episodes. But as I was asking those questions at this time, I did stop juggling and treading water, and I did begin to float. And when I did, I began healing mentally, emotionally, and physically. I was able to let go of toxic people and stop being a target of abuse. I was able to know with confidence that I am a good, worthy, lovable person. I was able to recognize that my experiences had not broken me, but were building me. I was able to value my own opinion of myself more than fear what someone else's may be. And I was able to get to know myself on the deepest level and in turn set and maintain boundaries. And I was able to drop the mask, the long held facade, and protect a sacred part of me at the same time. Now, when I was a teenager in lifeguard training, I did not have to learn to juggle while treading water, but I did have to tread water until I was fatigued while fully dressed, which creates an extra weighty burden, as you can imagine. I had to learn to conserve my energy to allow me to meet the time requirement without panicking, giving up, or wearing out. I had to learn to not only shed my clothing while staying upright, but to choose an article of clothing to gather air and create a flotation device from what had been burdening me and allow the others to fall away, to let them go. I learned to allow my body and mind to rest, to float, to relax. I had to learn to be still, to trust my device and silence the thoughts that would create fear, doubt, or worry, and embrace the gift of buoyancy, of breath, of calm. This time to rest, to recharge my body and rejuvenate my mind would allow me the focus and energy to succeed in the next thing, the next drill or the next test, because there's always another thing. And in this case, I'd be presented with an emergency situation where I'd need to fill my lungs with oxygen before going underwater purposely to pull an unconscious victim to the surface. Maybe secure my arm across their chest and rest my hip under their back and gently side stroke the both of us to safety. Coach Solomon would be proud of me that I remember all this. Had I not conserved energy and dedicated the time to rest my body and mind and dropped some of the weight I was wearing, the burden, if you will, that I was carrying, would have been no good to the other person and likely would have drowned us both. I also had to know when to let go of the other person and save myself, just like life. Now, there are many people who struggle with breaking away from the way they're living their life. And what they typically do is run or swim away, as I did the first time, and get in the first rescue boat. But what I realized is that the key to breaking away and reviving an authentic life is not by running or swimming away, but to stop and to float for a while. It's only in that stillness that you can open your airway, rescue your breath, and restart your heart and fully recover. And so, a teacher by nature, I put all that I've learned along the way into a process to help people expedite a healing journey that I call Soul CPR. I have a 12-week course, an 8-week coaching program, and a 1-week retreat by the same name. So in short, the CPR acronym is C, connect the dots of your journey to understand your past and how you've arrived where you are now. P, pinpoint the pain that keeps you stuck in a pattern of emotions and behaviors that hold you back from your best life and most rewarding relationships. And R, recover the truth of who you are. Rediscover what lights you up, plug back in, and let your soul shine once more. Have you ever felt like you were sinking to the bottom of the lake and that life was pulling you under into the dark, mucky bottom, to that blob monster? That your life needs resuscitating? Are you stuck in a cycle of pain or a pattern of abuse, of self-sabotage, or that your life is defined by loss? Let me ask you this. What are you struggling with right now? What have you overcome? Put it in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you. It'll help me determine what could be the topics of next shows. Now, we've talked about, what led to starting the podcast and the naming of the show. Someone asked me to also share how this became my career focus. And I mentioned earlier that I was a teacher by nature. Now, if you go back to childhood, you will rediscover your true nature as well. Now, as a child, I always thought I would be a teacher in the traditional sense, most likely in front of a fourth grade classroom, at a chalkboard, making concepts fun and easy to learn. I would literally come home after school in the elementary years and do my homework on a chalkboard, my favorite toy, and reteach it out loud to anyone who would listen. And sometimes it was a couple of younger neighborhood kids who tolerated it while waiting on me to play with them, or it would have to be a lineup of my dolls and stuffed animals. And now y'all know what a nerd I am. Well, somewhere in high school that changed to wanting to be in business and finance, and then in college to journalism and communications, where I learned the power and art of asking questions to help people reveal their stories. So coming full circle, when I went through my divorce, I found a local support group, which I highly recommend to everyone, by the way. And after it concluded, I was asked along with another participant to take over leading it. I believe because at the time I worked in training and facilitation at a corporation. Now, as you can imagine, I was hesitant to take the lead because as far as I was concerned, I was not yet healed, but someone said to me, you can't help but help yourself when you help others. So I took the role, and some 25 years later, I still lead support groups for separation and divorce. And throughout these 25 years, there would be participants who would ask for individual support. And I did what I could, but I didn't have any training or certification to do so. But after remarrying and eventually relocating, I had to give up my comfortable 17-year corporate career. We'll talk about that type of loss and transition in a future show, as I'm sure many of you can relate. But it afforded me the time and the blessing, I would say, to be a stay-at-home mom for a few years and continue leading support groups. But with the individual support requests still coming, I decided to answer the call and go back to school, making life coaching a career the past 9 years or so. I hope that answers your question, but you can read more about my story on my website at skyviewcoaching.com. I thank you for asking. Now, speaking of separation and divorce, I wonder if you're aware there is actually a divorce season. There absolutely is, and it is now. Divorce attorneys report that there are more calls and visits to their offices in January than any other month. Why do you think that would be? Why January? New year, new me? New life? In fact, I just started a new winter session support group last week, and there's still a waiting list to join. I'll start another one in April, and it may end up being full too, but typically in spring, I see a decrease in registration. Now, it's certainly true that as one year ends and another begins, people are commonly reflecting on their lives, making resolutions, setting goals for the new year, often hoping, I guess, for a fresh start and improving various areas of their lives. I think I tend to do this. How about you? Exercising more is consistently a top goal reported by major research polls. And if you go to the gym like I do, you certainly can't find a parking place right now. By the way, something else you may not know about me is that I'm also a fitness instructor. I start each day by leading a group class before beginning my workday. All to say this is just a strategy for my own success, because what I learned about myself when I was healing my initial emotional traumas was that if I wasn't accountable to others, I would let the dryer buzz or the email notification ring, and I wouldn't make it to the classes that I loved and needed for my mind, body, and spirit. And I do not like to work out alone. So I decided I would just teach those too. Why not, right? Anyway, let me tell you, the parking lots are overflowing and the classes are beyond capacity for now. But doesn't it also make sense that as the calendar turns, most of us fully examine our lives, taking stock of our accomplishments, our sense of happiness, our choices in our career paths, our friendships, intimate partners, our general life satisfaction? We ask ourselves some questions, maybe some light ones, some heavy ones, like, what is the value of this subscription or membership? What's the value of this relationship? How am I spending my money, my time? What drains my energy? What replenishes it? Who nurtures me? Who depletes me? And just like people who are unhappy with their physique may decide to make significant changes to their daily habits in exercise and diet, people who are unhappy in their marriages or intimate relationships may decide to make significant changes there, whether it is as simple as resolving to speak kinder to one another or commit to couples counseling or coaching. However, as we noted, research shows that the new year also sparks calls and consults with divorce attorneys. So January seems to be a big month of unhappy spouses checking out their options, which kicks off a season of divorce filings between January and March. Now, perhaps the most apparent reason for this is going to be, following the holidays. People don't want to disrupt traditions and festivities. I see this especially when children are involved, with the intention of giving them one last normal. But ladies and gentlemen, please don't underestimate your children. Depending on their ages, they are usually well aware of the discord. So the couple, who may have already made their decision, simply has either agreed to put up a united front to protect others from the news or to save face. Intentions vary, and the call is postponed. Or the one planning to exit the marriage, the one who has already made an independent, private Solo decision was decided to put up a front to protect others from the news or to save face. Again, intentions vary. And that puts January as prime time for announcing, I want a divorce or I need a change, usually meaning in the lease separation. Or in the case of an agreement, we're getting a divorce to announce to the family. In the case of the solo decision, I often hear the surprised spouse then ask or beg for counseling. And often the spouse who announced the proposed change will agree. And that sounds like a good sign, but then we have to wait to see what it looks like, meaning what actions happen that are directed at improving or saving the relationship. If the exiting spouse has already made a decision to leave, counseling or coaching may be simply to save face, to say they tried. And there may be someone waiting for them in the wings. And in my experience, there usually is. And that is why their try will not show much, if any, action. And that leaves the other spouse frustrated, drained, and defeated. All things that we can talk about in another episode if you want. The show is for you. So I do want to know what content you want. Please share in the comments. Now, regarding the holidays, it could also be stress and pressure. We all know it can be associated. That can be the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say. The seasonal stress will magnify and exacerbate pre-existing problems. Only a positive, healthy mindset and life balance will offset it. We've got Hallmark movies and commercials showing happy, loving couples offering thoughtful gifts and snuggling and matching pajamas. And that fantasy bubble gets burst, doesn't it? And all those unmet expectations lead to disappointment. All right, we're going to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about, regardless of season, are you prepared? Are you prepared for divorce? What if you're the one that gets blindsided? If you get just thrown out of the boat into that water? We'll talk about it, whether you chose it or not. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a heartbeat.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Soul CPR. We were just talking about divorce season being so common right after the holidays. It is also seasonal again right after summer break, when kids go back to school, right after those family summer vacations. One last normal? Maybe. So when is it a good time? Ever. And are you ever truly prepared to get thrown out of the boat or to jump back or to jump in that water and to swim away from a marriage? Look, divorce is mentally, emotionally, financially, and physically tough. It's draining. For the For most, the only good time to pursue divorce is when you've exhausted all options in making things work. So the question becomes, when is best for you, for your well-being, if you have choice in the matter? I had people in support group before who have agreed on timing with their spouse, whether they were the initiator or not, because of something special happening in one of their adult children's lives, like a wedding, graduation, or such. And even though the divorce process can take a while, they held back filing to avoid conflict of timing and the emotional toll expected from the proceedings. Now, Dr. Phil has a readiness test that he offers on drphil.com. And he says to ask yourself these questions, like, what was your marriage like when it worked? When did it go wrong and why? Is what you're fighting about worth breaking up your marriage? What do you want? What's it costing you to be in your relationship? Are you willing to put in the effort to make the relationship work? And what are you doing to contaminate the relationship? Yes, we all play our role in the demise of a relationship. Do you have unfinished emotional business? What's that mean? It means, are you still in love with your spouse? Are you hurt? Are you scared? Are you angry? Are you confused? Are you legally prepared? Are you ready to do all that work? Are you ready for a new relationship with your children? There's going to be a new way to behave and show up. Are you willing to create a new relationship as a co-parent? And my favorite line from Dr. Phil is, if you want out of a marriage, you must earn your way out. Now, that's what healthy partners do. Those who have those irreconcilable differences, they plan on getting in different boats and navigating the waters of divorce. Sometimes it's not that easy, is it? How do you prepare? You are ready, if you're the one making the decision, when you have first had a conversation with your spouse. Unless there is a very, very good reason to conduct a surprise assault, do not. Before you initiate divorce, communicate your unhappiness to your spouse. Ask them to go to therapy. If they agree, put in the effort. Then you could be the couple who agrees and refer back to the Dr. Phil readiness test. The reality may be that your spouse isn't trying, or you are just too far out of the marriage emotionally to make a reconnection. You will then be ready once you've consulted with an attorney or two or three and learned your rights and expected financial obligations and outcomes, and probably met with a financial advisor. When you've sought emotional counsel with a professional, maybe met with clergy, therapist, or a coach, and are ready to take ownership of the story being written from this day forward. It's really no different than the readiness test Dr. Phil asks of couples. If, when you believe you have given the marriage your best effort, when you are certain you have tried to be a respectful partner, and when communication, commitment, and compromise have failed despite interventions, it is then that you're ready. And you must also be ready to think, feel, and live differently. You're ready when you're ready to allow the pain to ebb and flow and not interfere or influence the business of divorce. It's when you're committed to doing the personal work of healing from the loss of what was, what should have been, and what never will be. And it's when you are willing and able to start moving forward in your new reality with hope and resilience. There's also going to be a reduction in lifestyle. You got to be ready for that. Statistics say there's a probable minimal 30% financial adjustment. Then ask yourself, what's the price of peace? Okay. There's also daily tasks that were previously shared or done by your spouse. You got to be responsible for taking those on. Be ready to share your children, your pets, your holidays. Be ready to be alone with yourself. Okay. Now, if you were blindsided by your spouse's decision, there was nothing to prepare, was there? That's the person that got thrown in the water out of the boat. And maybe you feel like you're getting pulled under. I get it. I know that in itself feels like a betrayal, because it is. Sometimes it's really a power play. You can only be blindsided if you weren't looking in the same direction, right? This would mean that the blindsider did not come to you and speak of their unhappiness. This would mean that they did not ask you to go to counseling to try to resolve the issues and save the marriage. This means it was a solo decision with no respect. After all, marriage by nature is about sharing decision making. It's a partnership. So this seemingly out of nowhere, I want a divorce, knocks the breath out of you, and things start changing rapidly, all while you're still in shock. And your partner was at least 10 steps ahead of you emotionally and financially. They've done what we talked about prior, but they did it without communicating. They've likely consulted with the attorney and the financial planner. They've possibly even met with the realtor and looked at a new residence for themselves. And they may be taking someone new out to dinner next Saturday night. And that leaves you feeling thrown overboard, not knowing which direction to swim. In this situation, most betrayed have a victim mindset. And I can't believe this is happening to me. Or a fighter mindset. I won't let this happen to me. It is certainly understandable depending on the circumstances of your having to accept your spouse's choice, but these mindsets won't take you far, especially the victim mindset. In fact, they are going to exhaust you. They're going to pull you under. They're going to sink you and your bank accounts too. So look, what's happening to you is scary. It leaves you upside down with uncertainty. And I know you want answers and hope for closure, but the hard truth is you can ask the questions of your spouse, but you may never get the answers that you're looking for. So reach for a lifeline. They're all around you, just like at any swimming location. You know who your friends are or a trusted family member. Find a support group in your area, a pastor, counselor. It's not time to see how long you can last in the water. These people and resources are your flotation device while you find yourself again. And then there's something inside of you as well, a strength from a previous experience that you've forgotten you have. I promise you will survive this. And if you allow yourself the space and time to heal, you will have a better next relationship. Float. While you're floating, ask yourself, why did I not see this coming? Was there no clue to the change in the season of my relationship? Did I ignore it? Did the ice storm come out of nowhere? I often hear, I thought everything was fine, except we had the usual fight about this or that. I was happy, and I thought he or she was too. I imagine a question may be, can a marriage be saved after infidelity? Yes, if both parties are willing to face one another in the proverbial medical examiner's office. It won't be easy, but with understanding, communication, commitment, and compromise, it is at least possible. May I suggest to anyone blindsided, making a goal of working toward a mindset of being responsible for you, because that thinking allows you to feel like you can let go of what victimizes and angers you so that you can show up in a cooperative manner for your own best outcomes. It's not easy, but nothing worth it ever is. Before I go further, I would be remiss to not mention that if there is domestic violence involved, it doesn't matter the season or the day on the calendar. There is no excuse for abuse. Let me repeat that. There is no excuse for abuse. Now, data varies from different reporting agencies, but all are alarming. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the CDC align. With 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience domestic violence in the form of severe physical violence in the United States. Does that surprise you? The prevalence of violence, or that men are also abused in relationships? They are. They were once boys, like our sons who grow up accepting, tolerating, and coping with what they observe and experience. And yes, women, mothers, can be abusive. It's hard to fathom if you've not experienced it. Regardless, what becomes familiar in childhood may become comfortable in adulthood, and then red flags don't look like red flags because they feel like home. Now, the data is broken down in more categories to include 1 in 5 women and 1 in 13 men have experienced sexual violence, and 14% of women and 5% of men have been stalked by an intimate partner. Ladies, you're the stalkers out there. If you are in any of these situations, get out and get support now. You will need an exit plan in place. There are shelters and nonprofits in your community which can provide information and guidance. And Dan, if we can pull this information up, you may visit www.thehotline.org. This is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. This is their website and their phone numbers. Each and every one of us deserves a non-threatening, non-violent relationship. They have information and resources. All right, thank you for that. What about emotional abuse? Just because the wounding isn't visible doesn't mean it isn't harmful. Do not minimize your experience. Reach out for support and guidance for this as well, so you can gain the confidence to leave the relationship. Okay. Emotional abuse is going to be an entire show just on its own because it's so insidious. A lot of people don't even recognize that it's happening to them, but it is, I can define it for you. It's anything that threatens, insults, manipulates, humiliates, intimidates, dismisses, and we will share more about that another time. I find in my support groups, when I always talk about it, it's one of those things that people have aha moments about sometimes. I know you've heard terms like gaslighting. You've probably heard about narcissism. A narcissist is not necessarily an emotional abuser. An emotional abuser is not necessarily a narcissist, though those two can go hand in hand. But we'll talk about that in another episode. It warrants its own show. All right, we are going to go for our last break and come back to close out this premiere show of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. I'll see you back in just a moment.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind sits birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
And welcome back to Soul CPR Healing Out Loud. In this premiere show, we've talked candidly about the current divorce season and how the new year, new me, new life mindset may influence the month of January, bringing more calls and visits to divorce attorneys. We've learned there is a seasonal cycle following the holidays and again after summer vacation breaks. Now, if you're struggling with feelings of something has to change, or if you've been surprised by your partner implementing unexpected change, seek support. While there are many reasons and particulars to consider, most divorces stem from incompatibilities, infidelities, financial issues, parenting stresses, and a deterioration of romantic and sexual connection. I think we'll do a show just on emotional needs and those disconnects as well. But whether you've chosen it or are considering it, or it's been chosen for you, you deserve support. Many communities offer support groups like the West Island Women's Center, where I lead a weekly online meeting. Now, this center is located in Montreal, Quebec, and here I am in Dallas, Texas. So there are options due to the magic of technology. If you cannot find a group available to you, individual support and guidance is always an option. You do not have to go through this alone. Knowing when you're ready to divorce, no matter the season, was another main topic today. If you're initiating, there may be financial and parenting matters to consider, among other practical matters. However, emotional readiness is our focus. In summary, you're ready when you're at peace with your decision, when you're ready to lose the victim and fighter mindset and instead think like someone who is responsible for themselves and their outcomes. You're ready when you're ready to separate your feelings from the business at hand. And you're ready when you are willing and able to ask for help when you find yourself overwhelmed and drowning in the emotion that's sure to pop up for you. And if you were blindsided, you may not have chosen this timing. But look at it this way. You cannot keep choosing someone who doesn't choose you. So it's time to walk away or swim away, to stay with today's theme, and float for a while. You may not be ready to say goodbye to your spouse, but you can learn to say hello to you. And when it comes to abuse, there's no excuse. If you're the abuser in the relationship, I'm not judging you. There's a reason that you've become an abuser, and it's likely because you were abused. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility as an adult to break the cycle and to get help. There is help for you. Seek it. And if you're the abused, you cannot fix a toxic partner. You cannot. You can try, you can feel like it's your burden, but you cannot and you will not ever succeed. There is help for you. It's confidential, and there are organizations with trained staff ready and able to assist you. So, is there ever a right time to divorce? It isn't about the calendar. It is about if and when it is right for you, no matter the season. Now, in preparing for the show, I found a ton of is it time to get divorced quizzes online. But let me save you some time and effort. Float. Be still. Breathe. Listen to your heartbeat and trust your inner knowing. Your soul is whispering to you right now. Are you listening? Now, since it has been our first day on the air, I'd like to say a big thank you to Bold Brave TV for hosting this show. And a thank you to Dan for keeping us up and running despite this rainy weather in Texas and my tech challenges. And I want to thank my swim coach, Roger Solomon, who believed in me when I first started and could barely complete 4 lengths of the pool. I mean, warm up just for our practices was 20 lengths of the pool at the time. I had a long way to go to build up that endurance, but I did because he believed in me, which allowed me to believe in myself. And a few years later, he failed me the first time I took the life-saving certification at age 15. He said he did so because he did not want to put me in a situation that I couldn't get out of. He feared that I could be overtaken in the water by a panicked victim. I am small or short, petite. So like everything before my traumas. I was that I didn't make the first time. I was saddened and disappointed, but I came back stronger the next year, better anticipating, better prepared, maneuvering the challenge, and I passed. Thanks, Coach. So as we conclude this first episode of Soul CPR Healing Out Loud, remember that healing is not a linear journey. It's a process of profound transformation. So if today's stories resonated with you, share the podcast with those who might need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts, and connect with me on social media on Facebook at Skyview Coaching, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X at Ann Papayoti, and let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. So until next time, may you find strength in your vulnerability and courage in your journey. Thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully.